Got it.
All right, so we ready to go on that?
Yep.
All right, so agenda for this one is talking a little bit about laser designation and how that works with semi-active laser homing weapons. Getting a bit into the details of how Hellfires and DAGRs work, and how we're going to call those types of weapons in using the 9-line. And what we'll be covering today is just a very small slice of the 9-line that's targeted at using rotor wing aircraft with these kinds of laser-guided weapons. And we're targeting that part because, of course, right now we're not using fixed wing, and because for the most part, you don't need the 9-line to work with rotor wing aircraft. It's just that with these types of weapons, it becomes important. All right, so semi-active laser homing, it's a type of guidance that's used on missiles and bombs. Essentially, it just means that there's a sensor on the front side of these weapons which will detect reflected laser energy off of some target. So you've got a laser designator. It shines a laser at some object. Some of that light will bounce off the object and reflect in just about every direction, provided it's not a mirror-like surface. And the warhead, flying towards in the general direction of that target is going to pick up some of that reflected light and guide towards it. Now, because it works in this manner, there are certain constraints. So first off, you better release the weapon, head it in the right direction, because otherwise it's never going to pick up that laser energy. Second off, it does need to actually get line of sight at some point on that laser energy. So if you have a target that's at the foot of the hill and the missile or the bomb or whatever is coming over the top of that hill, it may actually never get eyes on it because the hill will block it until it's right over the top of it and doesn't see it. So it's important to make sure that the missile or the bomb or whatever has a trajectory such that it will actually get to a point where it acquires that laser before it's too late. And then third, and this is really important, the laser energy that comes directly out of the laser designator is going to be a lot more intense than the light that's reflected off the target. And so what you absolutely cannot, under any circumstance, do is have the weapon coming in a direction where it's going towards the laser designator itself, because then it may pick up the direct laser energy coming out of it rather than the reflected laser energy off the target.
You can bomb yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. So I had my own fun experience with that. So if I may, guys, if you can visualize, you would the preferred is, if you think of a pie slice, you like 45 degrees off your flanks. Right.
We got a slide on this actually on the next page.
Then I will I digress.
So actually, so I've got two slides that are pretty much the same thing. So slide 4 is just the same as slide 3 because I didn't edit this properly. But there's one additional point on slide 4, which is that you have to consider the target engagement angle. And so what that is the angle between the laser designator, the target, and the attacking aircraft. And so that angle has to be sort of within the right range, otherwise we'll run into exactly these kinds of problems. And so that's shown on slide 5. Actually, I think there are parameters for this that are a little bit different specifically for the Hellfire. These may be slightly too generous, but we're going with these just for now. So on slide 5, you can see that there is a 20-degree safety cone around the laser designator. What that means is that you cannot have a target engagement angle of less than 10 degrees. So it's plus or minus 10 degrees off the laser designator. You can't have the aircraft in that window. The reason
don't shoot over your shoulder.
Exactly. So have them offset a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right. The reason for that, I don't even know if it's modeled in ACE, but essentially if they're right behind you, there's the possibility that the laser is going to reflect off of particulate matter in the air in front of your laser, and it's going to pick up on that, the reflections off the particulate matter rather than off the target. And that also can ruin your day because chances are that's a little bit of dust that you've kicked up right in front of you, or maybe some grass, leaves of grass right in front of you, or it's reflecting off of that. So those kinds of dangers are problematic.
Yeah.
And so you also don't want to be more than 6 degrees off. You don't want the aircraft to be more than 60 degrees off of your angle to the target. And the reason for that is the angle is going to be such that it's not going to pick up enough reflected light. And so you want to be between that 10 to 60 degree window, ideally about 45 degrees. And of course, if the aircraft is on the opposite side of the target, then you're doing it entirely wrong. It's not going to pick up any of the reflected light because it's going to reflect back towards you, not in that direction. And all it's going to see is the laser coming directly out of your laser designator.
Which, again, ruins your day.
All right, pulse repetition frequency codes. So these are the codes that distinguish different lasers so that you can have multiple targets designated and have them be attacked at the same time without them getting confused. The basic idea is that laser designators can pulse at specific intervals, and those intervals are determined by codes that are entered. Valid codes are between 1111 and 1788, and the only valid digits in such a code are 1 through 8, and so there's no such thing as code 1119. That just doesn't exist. I cannot stress this enough. We cannot cluster around one or two codes because that's going to mean that multiple people may be designating at the same time, and one person's missile is going to go to the wrong laser, and that may lead to a target getting struck at the wrong time, or it may lead to something that's not even a target getting struck. So,
hey, boss, is it okay for the teams to come up with a standard code?
Yes.
They use so each JTAC. If you guys want to come up with your own code. And that then becomes kind of SOP. So if we're supporting Viking, we know that it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we're doing Templar, it's once. I don't care.
Well, I think what we'll do is
4, 3 or something like that.
I think what we'll do is assign unit by unit a range of laser codes. Just so that, Viking, they may have 2 laser designators with them, and so they can use both of them without overlapping on Templar and so on with Wolfpack and so on with us.
Okay.
And ideally, we'll go over those laser codes in mission briefings just to make sure we're all on the same page. And of course, we can deviate from those pre-briefed codes as necessary. It's just important to make sure that everyone's on the same page if and when that happens. All right, so now we can go over armament. So there's 3 laser-guided weapons that we'll be using commonly with rotor-wing aircraft. There's the Hellfire Kilo, which is a high-explosive anti-tank warhead meant primarily for heavy and light armor, though it is very general purpose, so you can use it against infantry if need be. You can use it against buildings, and of course it will destroy the crap out of soft fix. And it can be used effectively up to 7 kilometers. Generally, you'll want to be a little bit closer than that just to provide a safety margin. But you don't want to be calling these in from one click out. It's kind of silly, and it will actually make it less accurate. So 2 clicks plus is ideal for the Kilo. I got a typo in this one, but the next one is the 114N, or November Hellfire. And that one is a thermobaric warhead used primarily against buildings, bunkers, and infantry.
That is savage. Thermobarics?
Absolutely.
That is, that approach is not allowed by the Geneva Convention, just from what I know about them. Like, toeing the line with the, how that works. But,
they
go
work
on.
very well.
Oh, yes.
So anyway, other than the warhead, it's the same as the Kilo. And then finally, there's the direct attack guided rocket, or DAGR. Essentially, that's a modified 70-millimeter rocket with an HEDP warhead, so high explosive dual purpose, meaning that it has both a high explosive anti-tank component as well as a blast fragmentation component, making it versatile. So that's best against infantry, soft vehicles, and light armor. Can also be effective against buildings. Basically, it's pretty effective against anything but tracked armor. And it can actually deal with some tracked armor. We have had some success there. If you're up against T-72, there's no guarantee it's actually going to kill it, though. If you're lucky, you may get a mission kill on it. The actual in-game range of that I have not fully tested, but let's call it 5 clicks to be safe. And again, under 1 kilometer, avoid that. It needs some space to do the guidance properly. Everyone with me so far? Any questions? All right, so next, the lock-on method. So both the Hellfire and the DAGR can work in 2 different lock-on modes. So the first one is lock-on before launch, or LOBL. What this means is that the DAGR or the Hellfire, the seeker on it will acquire the reflected laser before it's fired. And so what that means is when we launch it, we know that it is actually tracking a laser, that we're acquiring that laser properly. That's safer for ground forces in that it means that we know that it is actually going to guide onto a target as opposed to just sort of flying off and impacting at some random point. It does pose a greater risk to the aircraft, though, because it means we have to be within the line of sight. Otherwise, it's not going to pick up the laser energy. The second style is lock-on after launch, which is just basically the opposite. It means we're firing it without having first acquired the laser energy. So what's going to happen is that the missile or rocket will fire in a given direction and will continue in that direction until it acquires the laser, at which point it will start guiding onto the laser target. That's potentially dangerous in that, if we fire it and it doesn't actually acquire the laser, or it acquires the laser too late, it may not impact the target properly. It may impact somewhere else. However, it reduces the risk to the aircraft because we can fire it from way beyond line of sight from very safe positions.
If I may, a couple things. So, lock on before launch is pronounced low ball. Lock on after launch is low owl. And with low ball, that's more of a direct shot. So, whereas the low owl, the missile's gonna arc up, so it'll be more of a top-down attack. I don't know if the game replicates that right, but let's say you want to put something through a door in a building. Then you would want to use lock-on before launch because you'll get a more direct line of sight, direct, straight missile shot as opposed to after launch is going to pop up to look, but the seeker has time to look for the laser energy.
Actually, with lock-on before launch, it does actually use a top attack mode as well. That's variable depending on the distance to the target.
Okay.
So if you want a straight shot, you'll probably have to use a low owl direct.
Yep.
But anyway, next slide gets into the different trajectories that Al is starting to get into. So with low owl, you've got 3 different trajectories. You've got high, low, and direct. This only applies to the Hellfire, by the way. The DAGR only supports direct. And actually, I don't know that that's true entirely, because do you know, Al?
It's basically just a 70mm rocket, a 2.75-inch rocket with a guidance package on the nose.
Well, I mean, all I see is I look at the information on their website, and it says that it's fully compatible with Hellfires, but and it has Lobel and Lowell. But they don't specifically mention anything about the trajectories, but I had assumed that was the case.
Just to give you a quick thing, you were talking about not really effective against tracked vehicles with DAGR. So since the DAGR is the same exact warhead as a Hydra, your armor penetration is going to be enough to knock out tracked vehicles. I would say if we're dealing with Soviet armor, which is what we almost always are, Soviet armor, I would say from the rear or the top, anything before the T-80. T-80 is probably going to be impervious to it, but I'm thinking 72s, T-64s, T-62s, T-55s, they're all going to be vulnerable, especially T-55s from the rear or especially the top. Soviet armor, I think, only in those generations was like somewhere between 9 and 30 millimeters, which the Hydra will easily go through, but I'm not sure how well the game represents that. We
did have a mission kill on a T-72 recently with a DAGR that destroyed its engine, causing the crew to dismount.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's not so much that you shouldn't engage T-72s with DAGRs. I mean, if that's what you got, that's what you got. But
it's better than trying to shoot at it with an M72.
Sure. I mean, effects may vary, but the point is that it's not 100% reliable against tracked armor.
Continue. Sorry.
Anyway, with the low modes, with high, what that means is that when the missile fires, it will immediately climb 300 meters. This is useful because it means we can fire Hellfires from behind hillsides, from mountainsides, without needing to gain any line of sight, and just send it in the right direction, and then it's going to guide down onto your laser. So this is going to be most useful in cases where there is air defense in a given objective, and our goal is to take out targets without even putting the aircraft within line of sight of those air defense. So, I mean, additionally, it's useful when you want us to fire from without just alerting the enemy or them seeing the aircraft. So that's what those trajectories are for. And low is basically the same thing, except it only climbs 90 meters, and then direct just means the missile flies more or less straight out. Now, you guys don't need to sort of command us on which trajectories to use here. We'll understand given the circumstances. But if the need dictates the angle at which the Hellfire comes in on the target, then you can let us know that. Really, the most important thing here to know is that we're capable of engaging targets from behind defilade. And so, if the situation makes it dangerous for us to sort of actually gain line of sight to the target, you don't have to put us in a position where we have line of sight to use these weapons. Anyway, so we're on slide 12 now. These are just illustrations of the trajectories, basically covering the same information, but just for illustrative purposes. Slide 16, ripple fire. This is useful in cases where you may need to engage multiple targets nearly simultaneously. So for example, say that there's some kind of assault that's being planned on an objective. However, there are a couple pieces of armor on standby nearby that need to be taken out because they would be too dangerous for the assaulting force to deal with. And of course, it's necessary to destroy those targets very quickly to minimize the amount of alert time the enemy has before that assault begins. And so this can be done using a procedure called ripple fire, whereby we would fire multiple missiles, potentially on different laser codes, and then you would be lasing on those different laser codes. And so you might call for one missile on 1121, another one 1122, another one on 1123. I use sequential laser codes here because that makes it easier for us to switch between these laser codes as we fire them. And anyway, while you're lasing on those three codes, we'll fire those three missiles on those three codes, and it'll hit those three targets. And we can put out a decent rate of these things. We can probably fire one Hellfire per missile if you're putting them all on different codes. Now that assumes that you have enough laser designators to laser every target individually. That may not be the case, and so if you don't, then we can simply use a delay, and every time one designator's target is hit, they shift the laser on to the next target.
SOP, I would assume that there will be, in general, 3 laser designators carried across the whole unit. Possibly 4, possibly 2. Definitely 2. Likely 3, possibly 4.
So, I mean, this will all be situational, but essentially, if you've got multiple laser designators to spare for a given strike, use them. If you don't, then we'll just you can call this in with a 5-second spacing between warheads, and then just shift your lasers as they impact. Anyway, moving on. So all of this stuff is going to be called in using the 9-line procedure. All of these, anytime you're calling in for us to hit something using daggers or Hellfires, and you're going to be doing the lasing, that will be a 9-line. The comms procedure, in general, will follow the same flow as with the 5-line in terms of there'll still be a check and brief, there'll still be an AO update. Really, those are done regardless, and then, when you need to call a 5-line, you call a 5-line. When you need to call a 9-line, you call a 9-line. But, the basics are the same. And then you use the 9-line instead of the 5-line when you want to call in these laser-guided strikes, which you're designated for. So, getting into the 9-line itself, the CAS brief, which is composed of a game plan and a 9-line. So the first part is the game plan, and this is really, the game plan is just sort of a fragment at the beginning of the 9-line or prior to the 9-line, which summarizes how the JTAC and the aircrew are going to work together. So the game plan includes a few different pieces, or we'll just use 3 here. There's actually a few other pieces that can be included, but these are the 3 critical ones. And most of this stuff is actually not applicable to what we're going to be covering today with rotor wing aircraft. And so pretty much you're going to be saying the same thing every time on some of these lines, just because those are the only ways that we're going to use it until we get fixed wing aircraft. Anyway, part 1 of the game plan is the type of control. And what that means is essentially how the JTAC is going to handle controlling the attack with the aircrew. So type 1 control means that the JTAC is going to visually acquire both the attacking aircraft and the target. So that the JTAC is going to essentially observe the aircraft approach the target and make sure that everything is going well. And they will have to clear the attack on that final approach using the phrase "cleared hot." No other phrase, just "cleared hot." And that cleared hot is the final sort of clearance to fire, and at that point the aircraft fires. We're not going to be doing Type 1 control with rotor wing aircraft because in that kind of situation you'd be using the 5-line. Type 2 control is similar, except this is where the JTAC can only see either the target or the aircraft, but not both. In practice, we will be using Type 2 control here for what we're describing because with these remote laser guided strikes, generally speaking, the aircraft is going to be way outside of line of sight for the JTAC, and they're just going to be observing the target. And so that's Type 2 control. And with Type 2 control, again, the magic word is cleared hot. And so you're going to be coordinating with the aircraft, making sure everything is lined up properly, and when you want them to fire, you say cleared hot. Type 3 control, again, we won't be using it because it's actually a lot like CCA, but Type 3 control is essentially the JTAC is not going to sort of visually acquire the aircraft or the target necessarily. Essentially, the JTAC is giving the aircrew permission to engage the target within certain restrictions, with multiple attacks, but without sort of the JTAC having to clear each one of those attacks individually. And so with Type 3 control, the magic phrase is cleared to engage, not cleared hot. And that's because the aircrew is sort of managing the sort of the final part of that engagement rather than the JTAC doing so. But again, we'll only be using Type 2 here, so for the moment, this is always just Type 2 control. Method of attack. This is determining how the JTAC and the aircraft sort of agree on what the target is. So with bomb on target, what that means is the aircrew needs to correctly identify the specific target, and the JTAC needs to be confident that they've identified it. And so when you're using bomb on target, what that means is there has to be an additional conversation where the JTAC walks the aircrew onto the target. They sort of exchange descriptions of the areas, descriptions of the target relative to what's around it, and they make sure that they're sort of honing in on the same position, the same target. We're not going to do that because with these Hellfire strikes, again, we're going to be way outside of line of sight most of the time, so we're not going to see any of that shit. So we're going to be using bomb on coordinate, which just basically means we're responsible for sending the ordnance in the right direction towards the right location, and then the laser guidance will do the rest. Bomb on coordinate is also applicable to JDAMs, or GPS-guided bombs, which we'll get to when we get to fixed wing. But again, right now, it's just this is always bomb on coordinate for the laser-guided Hellfires. And then finally, ordnance. And so here you're going to be telling us either specifically you want a Kilo, a November, or DAGR, or alternately, potentially, just what kind of effect you want on the target. So if you want to take out some armor, you can let us know that, and we can select the ordnance for you. It's kind of like a wine list. If you want the server to make a recommendation, we can do that, tell you what wine pairs nicely with this dish, or you can just tell us what you want. Anyway, I've been talking for a while, so I'll try and get through the rest quickly.
Question.
Yes.
Why do you still want to specify that if we're talking about, Because I mean, you're just hitting the laser, right?
So the important thing here is...
Hellfire, and what type of Hellfire?
No, I mean the bomb target or bomb coordinate.
So our intent is to work in fixed wing. And so I figure it's more efficient to just get us used to saying these lines, and then when there's other things to say on them, we'll say them.
Yeah, right.
Alright, looks like I am gonna have to go. Yeah.
Alright, we'll catch up another time.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and read through the rest of this. I took a quick glance. The 9 line doesn't look like anything's changed from what I already had written down.
It's identical. I mean, it's just the same as the U.S. Armed Forces 9 line.
Alright, yeah. So I'll have to find out when I can organize some practice and whatnot for that.
Yep, absolutely.
Alright, yeah, so I'll let you guys know.
Alright, see you, man.
Cool. Yeah, see you.
Alright, so, I mean, the 9 line, there's not much to it, and I think we've all seen this before. One is the initial point, so where did the aircraft ingress from? In the particular case of these Hellfire strikes, it's not really so much an ingress point as a sort of point that we're firing from, like a battle position. So we'll just be likely in a static hover or some kind of orbit at that position until you call us to fire, and then we'll fire it on the right heading. But we're not going to fly through the target or anything. We're going to be staying at the safety of that position. Heading. This is important because we need to send that missile on the right trajectory, because otherwise the target engagement angle that you're sort of carefully trying to manage is going to be off. Or in the worst case, the missile is just going to fly in a direction where it will never acquire the laser, which is very bad. 3 is distance to the target in meters. 4 is the elevation of the target in meters. 5 is a description of the target. Target location is 6. 7, the method of marking. In this case, it's always going to be laser designation because that's what we're using this 9 line for. In this field, you should specify the codes that we're operating on. 8, friendly location, so location of friendly forces. And 9, the egress. Again, this is not generally going to be applicable for us when we're firing from a battle position. Generally speaking, these positions are going to be safe enough that we can stay there. But if you do want to move us out of there, you can, and then you can specify an egress. But otherwise, you can just render that line NA. And then finally, remarks, and again, just throw in any information that's relevant.
So, the hardest one, to be honest with you, the one where the most mistakes take place that I've seen is in line 2, the heading, of what the bearing is from the IP. A lot of people, I have seen the mistake where they're going to give the bearing from their location to the target, but it's the initial point. So, think of the initial point as kind of like a line of departure, or something like that. So that just I've seen more times than not that people make that if there's going to be a mistake for the 9 line, that's where it happens.
Okay, yeah, makes sense.
So some additional things. Some of this I've already mentioned, but anytime we're reading friendly grids or enemy grids, it's just good to be clear about what they are. I mean, this is stuff we all did in the goons. When we're saying friendly grids, we say friendly grid, and then give the grid. Just to make sure that even if someone has, misordered the lines in their 9 line and is sort of interpreting them incorrectly, you remove any ambiguity as to what the grid represents.
Yep, no, that's cool.
Reattack, so anytime an attack has been completed, you see the weapon splash, or for whatever reason it never shows up, and the target's still standing, you can call for a reattack. You should still say cleared hot for when you want them to fire, but you can say bad effect on target, need additional need immediate reattack, cleared hot, and then we'll just send another Hellfire. Now it's good to specify the code if there were multiple. So if there was some kind of ripple fire attack where you use codes 1121 and 1122, in your reattack you should specify which code we're reattacking on, just so there's no confusion there.
Okay.
And then finally there's a... Sorry, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say that one thing that for the JTACs is when we fire the missile, we will call rifle, the word rifle over the radio, so you'll know that we've put a missile in the air. So you'll know that there's a weapon downrange. At least for the Hellfire, we'll call rifle. I don't know if you want to change that.
We'll do it for the daggers as well.
Okay. So if you hear us call rifle, that means we've pulled the trigger.
And we're always going to call that out anytime that you're responsible for the sort of terminal guidance of the weapon. So if you're lasing, obviously you need to know that the weapon is inbound, and so we'll call that out every time we fire.
Yeah. Okay.
And then last point of contact is a battle damage assessment or a bomb damage assessment. And that's just after the attacks are complete, you'll then know what the result of those attacks are. And then, the whole thing can repeat itself as necessary. All right, then the last slide, brevity code. So Al already mentioned rifle. Additional things, you should call out lasing and then the code when you're lasing the target. And so after you've delivered your 9-line and we're in position, you'll say, lasing code 1121, and then potentially cleared hot if you want us to engage at that point in time.
Okay, yeah. I remember kind of doing it where we'd say, lasing code 1122, 1, whatever.
Yep.
Hellfire kilo cleared hot, or, can you specify the ordnance then? Like if you had two different targets and you wanted two different ones, or?
You can absolutely do that. And in fact, I should just clarify, all of these sort of all the structure that we have here is not to prevent us from using sort of additional information as appropriate. And so, you can always speak to us in English when you need to speak to us in English.
Yeah, especially in the beginning. Like, you get all like, oh shit, wait, how do I say this again?
Yeah.
We're people on the other end. We're not a machine that's only going to understand if you put, exactly those 9 lines in there.
Yeah.
Except for Frank. Frank's a machine.
Well, noted.
No, but in fairness, he is an engineer, so he takes a lot of things literally.
Okay. That's what my degree's in, too. So that'll be good there.
There you go. I guess no engineer jokes then.
That's all good.
All right, so with that said, we can get to actually doing some of the shit. Julian, do you have a laser designator on you?
Yeah.
All right, Al, can you go get a... actually, no, I can use Boost to spawn it here so that we don't have to deal with the travel time. Let me just spawn the necessary stuff for you.
Chiron, it's only showing 4 of each.
Copy that. I'll have to do.
Yeah, roger. I'll have to have remedial block of training. All right. Chiron Reaper.
This is represented.
Yeah, roger. Do you want me to do all the calls on this freak, or do you want me to do it on a different freak?
All calls should be over 4-2.
Copy. And what's our call sign for today?
Ground forces will be represented by Templar. You will be Reaper 1.
Copy. All right, I've got some issues here. I'll have to work through them. Stand by. Templar 7, Reaper 1.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever.
Templar 7, Reaper 1, VHF.
Respond when you're ready.
You hear me on 4-2?
Yeah, affirm. Hold on. Julian's going to respond in a second. So are you not hearing over him 4-2?
No, hold on.
Just having some radio issues here. Wait, 1.
42, right?
Yep.
I'm on it. I should hear him.
Yeah, give a radio check.
Radio check channel 42, over. Did you hear me on it?
Yeah, I heard you. Reaper Chiron, interrogative. Did you not hear Templar speaking over 4-2? Reaper? Reaper Chiron?
Reaper.
Yeah, we're not receiving your transmissions over 4.2, and I don't think you're receiving ours over 4.2. I think you may be on a different channel. Can you confirm?
Stand by.
Templar 7, Reaper 1.
I got you, Lima Charlie. Over.
This is Reaper 1. MH60 Lima DAP. Call sign Reaper 1. Break. Position holding at Fob Grizzly. Altitude 500. Break. 4 times Hellfire Kilo. Break. Or correction, November. Break. 4 times Hellfire. Correction, 12 times Hellfire November. Break. Playtime 1 plus correction 5 minutes playtime. Break. Optical and remote lays only. Break. Abort code, abort. How copy, over.
Temper 7 copies all. Go ahead this time, push to BP Irene, break. Location is grid 2619er. How copy, over.
Push to BP Irene at 2619er. Time now, over.
Roger that. I got a AO update for you. Let me know when ready, over.
Represent.
I currently got the friendly grid 248219er. Break. Got an enemy grid of 251224. Break. We're currently in an overwatch position in the friendly grid, scanning the area. How copy, over.
Do you see what that third vehicle is, the farthest one?
Reaper 1 copies. Friendly grid 248. Break. 219. Enemy grid 251, 224. And Templar currently in overwatch from friendly grid, over.
Did you specifically call out that there was a radar-based AAA?
No, I did not.
All right, so just amend your situation, your AO update to include that, because that's obviously a key anti-aircraft threat.
Okay, so what is that? A radar?
Radar-based AAA anti-aircraft artillery. You can just call it a Shilka.
Okay.
He'll know.
Okay. Reaper 1, number 7 here. Be advised that enemy grid contains a enemy Shilka. How copy, over.
Reaper copies. Enemy shield grid. Enemy grid.
You gonna be safe pushing to that battle position there? Over.
I'm fixing to find out.
So while he's pushing, can you tell me what your target engagement angle is roughly?
I'd say it's hopefully just outside the 10 degrees there.
Just outside of 10 degrees? It should be. So what I'm seeing, and maybe I'm misreading this, but if you're having him fire from Irene, it's a target engagement angle of 55, which is still safe. You're safe up to 60, but it's closer to the 60 than it is the 10.
Well, we're at 248, 219.
So let me show you what I have marked.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, yeah, you're right. I guess we're further over to the, for some reason I placed us at that military base, but yeah, no, you're right.
So that's what I have, and that should be about 55, which is safe here. But make sure you plot this out yourself to be sure you know exactly what your target engagement angle is. You shouldn't be off by more than say 5 degrees just by doing it out on the map.
Yeah.
And you can get you provided him a 6-digit grid, but you carry a micro dagger, right?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, you can check with the ground as to whether you're supposed to have one, but I imagine you ought to have one, and that gives you a 10-digit grid on it, so you've got all the precision you need.
Okay.
So what I did too, I think I got a pretty.
Where would that be? Is that something that would be down in those like special slots, or
You can put it anywhere.
Okay.
But anyway, I mean, so what I did is I first used the micro dagger to pretty accurately identify our position, based off of the 10-digit grid, and then I noted the heading and distance to the target. And then I used the map tool to draw a line at that heading in the direction, check the distance, and then I referenced that against the fact that I knew the target was on the road just to make sure that everything made sense. And so I noted that the distance from sort of the line drawn on that heading from my position intersected with the road at a distance consistent with what the rangefinder was telling me.
Yeah.
Do you know how to use the? Do you know how to? So you open up your map and you use Ace Interact, and you go to Map Tools and then select Small Map Tool, and then you got to move it over from should appear somewhere on that map. You might have to zoom out to find it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Chiron Reaper.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a Reaper.
There's a way to rotate it, isn't there?
Roger, Chiron Reaper. Mud directly off my nose, bearing 319. Break. 1 kilometer.
Yeah, copy that. Wait 1 for further instructions. All right, so you see the line between BP Irene and the target?
Yeah.
So you'll note that that's just at the foot of the hill, so he's not getting a whole lot of defilade there. If you shift BP Irene a bit to the west, you'll put the hill in between him and the target, and you'll still have a good engagement angle. So you maybe shift it to the southwest if you want to keep him on the water, but if you move BP Irene there, which I named it just a bunch of close brackets because that's what I hold to talk, then you'll note that that line goes through the hill and he'll have more protection just by staying low.
Okay. I'll push him down there.
Oh, it's so rotating the map tool, you hold Alt and you click the sides and then you drag the sides.
Okay.
The center part with the compass directions will stay still. Yes, you can use Alt to click and drag it. Now, I don't recommend using the map tool, like the ruler part of it, to draw straight lines because you can just Control-Shift-Click to do that.
Control-Shift? Okay.
So yeah, if you Control-Shift and click and then it'll... No, I mean, there's a lot of little things like this which are useful.
Okay, cool. I'll push him down there real quick. Hey, Reaper 1, 10 for 7, go ahead, push to BP Mary at this time, break. BP Mary is located about a click to your southwest. I'll copy over.
Reaper copies. Move BP Mary this time. Moving.
All right, so how do you want to handle the laser designation here, given that we have 3 targets and 2 lasers?
Let's have, we'll just kind of leapfrog it, I guess. Let's start with the, actually we'll probably start with the Shoka, so we don't put, we'll start with the fucking tanks. We'll start in the front. If you want to laser the middle one, I'll laser the lead one. And then basically once the second one got hit, I'll switch over to that last one. So it'll be first on my laser, then yours, and then mine again.
Sounds good.
So I'm right now on code 1122. So if you want to go to 1123, and then I'll go up to 1124 for the last one.
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay, we'll do that. Let's see. I think I'm ready for the 9 line then.
All right, well, when you're ready, just give him a state when ready for cast brief or something like that.
Yeah. Reaper 1, Temper 7, got a cast brief for you. Wiseman ready to copy. Over.
Reaper 1, Roger, standby.
So you had me on 1122 or 1123?
Go to 1123.
Copy. And I'm lasing the middle vehicle, the second T-72.
Yes.
So just a note.
7, Reaper 1, set. BP Mary, ready to copy.
All right, so go ahead with that, and I'll discuss later.
Hold on. Hey there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Did you hear that? What I said?
Negative.
Oh, do you think it makes sense to take out the Shoka first?
Temper
just
7,
because it'd be
Reaper 1,
safer?
set. BP Mary, ready to copy.
So just go ahead and deliver the 9 line. I is waiting for that.
Okay. Okay, roger that. It'll be a Type 2 attack break, bomb on coordinate, and it'll be 3 Hellfire kilos break. BP Mary break, heading roughly 350 break. Distance about 3000 meters break. Target elevation 035 meters break. Target is 1 times Shoka and 2 times T-80 tanks in a column formation break. Target location 251242, correction, 251224 break. Marked by laser code 1122, 1123, 1124 break. Friendly location 248219er break. We'll start with code 1122 and then move to 1123 break. Finish off with 1124. I'll copy. Over.
You're also going to need to specify the pacing for these missiles.
Reaper 1 copies. Type 2, break.
Okay.
3 times Hellfire Kilo from Mary, break. Direction 350, break. 200 meters. 035 meters. Target 1 times Shilko, 2 times T-80 at, break. 251224, break. Laser codes 1122, 1123, 1124, break. Two 248-219, friendly location. Over.
So 3-second spacing would be good here because that's going to give you 6 seconds to shift your laser because there's a target in between.
Chiron Reaper.
Okay.
Is Reaper sent it?
Yeah, Roger, you're going to have to walk me through laser code change.
Yeah, copy that. Can you open up your add-on controls menu and go to, wait one, let me check. ACE equipment. You should see laser code cycle up, cycle down.
Stand by.
So you need the pacing because if he fires them as quickly as he can, and he's used to doing it right now, he's a little bit rusty, but he should be able to fire these missiles 3 of them within practically 1 second. And that's not going to give you enough time to shift your laser after the first one impacts necessarily.
Okay.
So if it's all on different lasers, there's no problem. But if you're shifting, you need to buy yourself enough time to shift. And because there's another laser code in the middle, because I'm lasing, you'll have twice as long as whatever the spacing is to shift. If you were doing this by yourself, then you would need more time because there would be no additional spacing between them.
So I mean, I guess my plan was to just be like, first coat like cleared hot, and then second coat cleared hot whenever we want to. Like, would that work too, or no?
There's no reason you can't do it that way, but the goal here is to get the impacts as close together as possible, given the situation and the equipment, just to minimize the amount of time that they're aware.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, that was in the A's.
Reaper 1 Temper 7. Only correction I got for you is the distance to the target's about 3500 meters break, and we're gonna want a spacing of about 3 seconds between the missiles. I'll copy over.
This is Reaper 1, Roger, copy, trying to set that up now. I'll advise as soon as I get that done. So, Chiron, that was in the A's menu.
Copies.
That is in the controls menu, and then configure add-ons, and then the ACE equipment section.
Roger, stand by.
So just a note on lasing. Can you just get in your laser designator, put it on thermal mode, and then look at the middle T72, the middle Vic? Let me know when you're ready.
I don't think this has thermal. It's just, I don't know, it might not be the same that you have. It's just got night vision.
Well, wait one. Let me... actually, can you turn on your laser and see if you see the laser? Do you see a laser dot at what you're pointing at?
I don't see it on the tank. I think I see it when it's closer. Hold on, let me just lay something closer. Hold on.
All right, let me just drop mine.
No, I don't think I see it.
All right, I'm going to drop mine for you, and then I'll pick up another one. All right, see you right there. Be right back. All right, can you confirm that you see your laser dot now?
Okay, I think I got it. Let's give it a whirl.
Yeah, I can see it in the thermal.
Yeah, copy that. We're just covering one minor point, then we will call you in. All right, so look at the middle tank.
I'm ready.
So can you see my laser?
Yep.
So what we want for this is to lase something.
Templar 7, Reaper 1.
Just hold comms for the moment, Templar. We're just going over something very quickly. It should be one mic.
Copy.
So what we want to do is we want to paint an upward reflecting surface. So like the dome of the turret right here is good. The top of the fuse, the top of the hull is good. What we don't want is the downward facing part of the hull right here, because that light's just going to reflect down into the ground. It's not going to be picked up by the laser. We also don't want to laze into any sort of inset area like the tracks, where maybe it's sort of hidden by the guard on the tracks. So like down here, we don't want that. Essentially, we just want to laze the surface such that it's going to be able to pick it up.
Okay.
I don't know actually how much of this is modeled by ARMA, but this is actually in the field manuals and everything. So that would be it.
That's what I like. It's good info.
FYI, my controls are jacked, so I gotta fix all this sometime.
Cool. Was that what you wanted to cover?
Yep. Copy that. Yeah, sorry, that's all I wanted to cover. Just wanted to make sure we're on the same page there.
Cool.
All right, so go ahead and call them in, or at least let them know that you're lasing on the code and then cleared hot. Or actually, before we do it, why don't you check that he's ready to fire, and then go ahead with tell him, lasing on codes, whatever, and then cleared hot.
Yep. Okay. Reaper 1 Temper 7, are you ready to engage? Over.
This is Reaper 1, ready to engage, over.
Reaper 1, Templar 7, lasing code 1122, cleared hot.
Templar 7, Reaper 1, Roger. Break. Advise you want 2 seconds between each with changed laser codes after each shot, correct?
Make it 3 seconds. Over.
Copy. Cleared hot on all 3 weapons at 3-second interval.
Roger that, cleared hot.
Rifle 2-2. Rifle 2-3.
That wasn't enough time.
Splash.
No, it was.
It's plenty of time.
Rifle 2-4. Run.
Damn. Oh, shit. I almost forgot to change the code. Maybe I changed it too late.
Yeah, that's probably it.
BDA 2 times T-72 destroyed. Go ahead and repeat that last one. 1124, 1 Hellfire Kilo, cleared hot.
Roger. Rifle 2-4.
Sorry, taxpayers, I wasted 10 grand.
There we go.
Splash BDA, 1 time, Chilka destroyed. All enemy destroyed. Go ahead, hold at BP Mary. Over.
Reaper holding BP Merritt.
Are we sure those two T-72s are destroyed? There's been no secondaries and I see no smoke.
Disabled, huh? Yeah. Is there no small agreement? Hold on.
I see nothing. I mean, they're definitely good hits, but...
Yeah, I guess I just dropped their cannon a little bit.
Yeah, they do look funny. Maybe I didn't put anybody inside them.
Yeah, well, we can hit them again, I guess. Hey, Reaper 1, Templar 7, go ahead. We'll laze again on 1124 and 1123. Break. You're cleared hot.
Copy, understand 1124 followed by 1123. Stand by.
A from 3 seconds again. Over.
Roger, and be advised, I will be firing Novembers. Over.
It still may work.
Roger that.
I don't know how well Ace has fixed this. Previously, they did set this wrong for November's, though I think they patched it.
Rifle 1124.
Okay, yeah, well, I guess you only had 4, huh? Yeah.
Rifle 2-3.
See the different effect on these ones?
Yeah. Oh, it's crew.
The effect there was sort of, it's like this weird sort of cloud that pops out. That's the thermobaric.
Interesting.
Alright, so that did disable both of them. Previously the crew were inside, so it wasn't disabled.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yeah, I think it just kind of must have just fucked with the turd or something, because it kind of dropped the barrel a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes it's not always clear exactly at what threshold they hop out. I thought killing the main gun would make them hop out, but I know killing the engine does.
Yeah.
Anyway, give him one last BDA.
Templar, correction. Viking 1, Templar 7, BDA, 2 times T-72 disabled. I'll copy over.
Reaper 1 copies. 2 T-72 disabled.
Alright, everybody, that's NDEX. Let's meet up and debrief.
Copy. Copy, RTB.
Actually, Al, can you sit down? I'll give you grid ref weight 1. Why don't you come up with an LZ brief? Don't put him down on the slope here because he's got the refueling pod sticking out. It's going to be kind of a pain, so give him a flat area.
I'll just put him down here.
Reaper Chiron, you'll be getting an LZ brief shortly.
Viking 1, Templar 7, got an LZ brief for you, over.
It's Reaper 1.
Oh shit, what did I say?
Viking 1.
Oh.
Templar 7, Reaper 1, standby.
Sorry, did you hear me? Stand by.
Templar 7, Reaper 1, ready to copy.
Roger, LZ DAGR break. Grid 247218 break. Marked by smoke, 2 passengers break. Friendly location 248218 break. Enemy location 251224 break. You've got a hill to the northeast and to the one to the southeast break. Ingress west to east and good for immediate push. I'll copy, over.
Roger, copy. LZ Dagger 247218, break. Two packs. Friendlies 248218, break. Enemy 251224. Hills northeast and southeast, break. Approach west to east, immediate push, over.
Hey, Furman, you actually got a hill to the northwest as well. I'll copy, over.
Copy, hills northwest as well. I'll be moving out. I'll call it moving.
Stalk up.
So there's just one thing I want to call out here. So you see how the hill gets a lot steeper around here?
Yeah.
So if he puts it down in the flat spot here, he still has to worry about the slope right here because the rotor may strike it.
Right.
And so the only thing is...
Templar 7, Reaper 1, inbound. We'll call 1 mile out. Correction, 1 kilometer out.
Just make sure he doesn't set it down right at the sort of the spot where the hill starts coming up there and then lose the main rotor on that.
Right, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll put him down in the flat part.
So there's no reason you can't make contact with him when he gets within sight. When you put the smoke down and he confirms the color, you can tell him, if say you put the smoke right here, that this on the smoke is good and that area is level.
Yeah.
So if you give him any kind of visual reference as to what part of the train is the level part, that's useful information.
Okay. Cool.
Of course, in this particular case, it's not too difficult because it's the day, but just as a general rule, the more difficult the circumstances, the more you need to communicate with them. Make sense?
Yeah. Yep. Definitely.
And anytime you see him, if he's about to make a mistake from your perspective, let him know.
Yep. Okay.
And try to be as brief as possible as your instructions there. Don't try and give a long-winded explanation if he's about to clip a tree with a main rotor or something like that.
Yeah.
Tell him what direction he needs to move in and sound imperative.
Okay.
Templar 7, Reaper 1, 1 kilometer, request smoke.
Rush, don't stop. And if you put it down right at the right edge of the smoke, you'll be good.
Be careful of giving directions like right and left, because you've got to orient yourself from his perspective, and it's easy to make a mistake doing that.
Yeah. That's perfectly right.
All in. Thank you for the ride out.
No worries.
My left is all screwed up, and my cyclic, the trigger I pull for the Fox mic radio causes the aircraft to gain altitude. So I have no idea what's happening with my controls, but they're all ganked up.
Oh, well, that stinks.
Good thing I took tomorrow off and try and get all this stuff worked out.
Yep.
Yeah, I was doing quite a kabuki dance, holding there, trying to push different buttons. So.
Well, thankfully we had you firing the Hellfires, which don't require as much work, but I can't imagine it would have been easy to do actual like gun runs using that.
It would have been no fun trying to do that. That would have been busier than a one-legged paper hanger.
All right, so once we sit down, we'll just do a quick debrief, go over what worked, what didn't, and what we need to all work on in the future.
Sounds like a plan. Sounds good.
All right. First, comments, questions, concerns about how that went?
Well, definitely need practice, just getting, used to it all. But that's why I'm here, I guess.
Oh, we all need that.
I'd say the same thing. I mean, I thought, for the first time, it went pretty smoothly, and I think, just like Julian said, it's just, we got to get in here where we can and practice doing that stuff, even if it's just sitting on top of the same hill and walking through.
Yeah, I think what would be helpful is to practice some of this, like with some like time hacks or something. Because the thing is, when we're doing the mission, it's always like a lot going on, and there's like 5 other things to deal with while trying to do this, and it's all got to go fast. So
yeah.
So one of the things I'd also like us to work on is a little bit of empathy, but what I mean by that is we'll have our pilots do this from the ground perspective, and Julian will put you in a gunner seat and have you just sort of understand what the other's roles entail, and just make sure we're seeing each other's perspectives.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's really good.
But to be honest with you, I think for the 9-line stuff, most of that's going to be hopefully fairly pre-planned. Because like you said, if everything's happening at once, it's going to be hell for you to try and put together a 9-line, send a 9-line, get a read back on a 9-line, and get everything set up to laze and shoot. So that's just going to take a lot of practice. But hopefully most of the time it's going to be, we're going to put a Hellfire or something into a space, so just as a pre-assault fire kind of thing, so we can work it through and have it all set, before the fun starts, kind of thing. Because it's going to be very hard for you guys to do 9-lines in the middle of a firefight.
Yeah.
So the thing there I'd recommend, Julian, is really spending a lot of time working, with the laser designator, working with the map tools, getting quick at setting things up. I mean, so the basic part is first you need to get your position right, then you need your heading and distance to the target right. Draw that line, mark the and a target position, figure out where you want your BP, set that up, calculate the target engagement angle, and then write it up. So as fast as you can get doing that, that's great. So obviously if it takes you 10 minutes to do it, then by the time you've set it up, the circumstances may have changed and your 9-line may be stale. So if you can set one up in as quick as possible, literally time yourself doing that. Set up a simple example in the editor, time how long it takes you to do it, and just try and work at it until you get better.
Yeah. So the other thing I would just tell you is, and no look on either one of us, I forgot one of the lines in the 9-line because I scribbled down whatever you said and I didn't know what it was, so I just skipped it. If don't have any problem with telling the aviator, hey, you forgot line 3, because I wrote down SM and I forgot what SM meant. So if you don't hear a complete readback, say just repeat line 3, whatever it was. Don't feel so don't feel bad about that. The only thing I would say is think about the fact that especially if it's a single pilot aircraft, whether you may hopefully we probably ought to tell them that we're up there, because if it's a one-person aircraft, then he's trying to fly the aircraft, he or she's trying to fly the aircraft and write down whatever you're saying and talk on the radio and that kind of stuff. So just bear that in mind, that if there's 2 people in the cockpit, hopefully whoever's writing the stuff is not the person flying the aircraft. Yeah. So it should go quicker. But just remember, if it's a single pilot situation, you know that. If you can give them a little more time in between to scribble things down, that would be of help. But that stuff we'll know as we work it through. So.
Now, this is something I can help you both with, I think, because I should, I still didn't do this, set up printable sheets for each one of these briefs just to make sure that you guys can print it out and have something where the lines are listed, so you don't have to.
That, boss. I mean, seriously, I got a big, huge stack of 5x7s and some Sharpie markers, and I just scribble. So that's okay. I mean, it's not that I forgot what line 3 is. I just forgot what he told me what that particular line 3 was, kind of thing. I mean, if you want to do that, that's cool. But it's just and we'll get better with time. I mean, I actually, it was damn good training tonight. I mean, we went through it, and there's a lot to know. And seriously, Julian, if you want to pop on at some time, just give me a shout, and if I'll be more than happy to get on if I can. And if it's just, I'm gonna drop you on a hilltop, and then you're gonna,
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be helpful with the training session also just do it over and over and over.
Yeah,
again.
Absolutely.
A few times. Well, I just have to see one at a time. It's hard to always make it happen, but there might be some odd time where we're both on and we got time. That might work. So.
And I'm going to try and make it so that we can steal you from Thor more often during the regularly scheduled trainings. Just I don't know, maybe once every 2 weeks at least, get in a good hour, hour and a half session.
Yeah, I need that training too, though, because I don't even know how these guys operate yet.
And we all need to work together on everything. So I mean.
Yeah. But like I said, if you've got some time, just hey. If I'm around and I'm not doing anything, I can probably pop on a little bit because it's good training for me too. And we just go blow up a village or something. We don't have to have Zeus. We just, hop in the aircraft and, fly out to some place on it, put you on a hill, and then.
Yeah, we can probably find a time this weekend. I'll be gone for 3 weeks after that, but we can probably find a time this weekend or so to hop on a little bit. I mean, I have a few days off now, so there'll be some downtime for sure where I can hop on and mess around a little bit.
So I'm off till next Tuesday. So just pop on Discord and we'll work it out, because I can sure use the training. And we've got everything I need over at the airfield, right? So I can just pop over there and change out the weapon loads and stuff like that, and practice shooting Hellfires for them.
Absolutely, and that goes for me as well. I mean, anytime you want to sort of pop on or ask a question, I'm around. So
cool.
I did have a couple additional comments that I just want to make sure I relay. I don't think it's anything anyone doesn't know. But 2 points to remember. First, with these briefs, get everything written down before you say them, to the point where when you actually do them, there shouldn't be anything to be worried about or confused about. You're just reading what you've written down. And again, obviously easier said than done, but that's what we need to get to the point where we write everything out, and then when it's over the radio, it's nice and brief and to the point and clear. And the second thing is, if you're asking them to copy more than 2 things, make sure that they're ready beforehand. So, state when Wendy for cast brief, or stand by for a 9-line, however you want to do that, but just don't give them too much without explicitly telling them that they're going to have to copy it.
Yeah. No, you did a great job with the tempo of it. At least for me, the tempo was fine tonight. I mean, if you have somebody tries to rattle it off in 2 seconds, I can't even finish writing the first line 1 down. Scribbling something down before they're on line 4. And it's got to be I like the pace of your tempo that you did. At least for me, I was able to write everything down. So.
Okay. Well, that's good to know.
All right. Any last comments?
Damn good training tonight, boss.
Oh, well.
Good stuff.
I'm happy worked out. So we should have one more of these for fixed wing, but then obviously just a whole bunch more of going over what we've just did and combining it different ways just to get everyone operating at a faster speed and greater level of comfort.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
All right. That's it. Thanks, guys.